Hello everyone and welcome to this session. My name is Wart Wijstra. I am a product manager at FHIR, and here at FHIR North I will be presenting to you from Amsterdam how to create a FHIR implementation guide in 45 minutes with Simplifier and Forge. So as I said, my name is Wart Wijstra. I am a product manager at FHIR for FHIR data modeling. My contact details are here on the slide, so you can reach out to me here, or later after the session we will have a Q&A section. I work at FHIR, as I mentioned before. FHIR is a unique organization within the FHIR community. Our CTO, Ewout Kramer, was one of the co-writers of the original FHIR specification. We're still deeply involved in that. We're also the organizers of FHIR Dev Days. And FHIR provides tools, training and consultancy to everyone who wants to implement FHIR in their organization. I want to note that this session is pre-recorded, so I will try to monitor the chat during this, but there's also a half an hour of a Q&A session directly after this session for any questions for you to reach out there, or reach out to me on the contact details that are shown here. I first want to start with showing a bit of the FHIR ecosystem, how I see it, and also how the FHIR tools that we're going to use today fit within that ecosystem. So you see on the bottom here the different users of the FHIR data model. On the left here we start with FHIR data modelers, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. People who are building a FHIR data model, building all the requirements from such a model into the FHIR framework. And we're going to use Forge for that, for developing locally on your own computer to make a data model. And then once you're happy with that, you can share that to other people in Simplifier. Simplifier is a cloud platform, and it's meant both for collaboration with your colleagues and for sharing to the wide world once you're happy with your data model. So that's the cycle that we're going to focus on today. But then, of course, we have a data model, and that data model can be used by what we call FHIR implementers, people who take that data model and use it in a FHIR server, like, for example, our FHIR server. So they take the data model from Simplifier, they put it in their server, they make sure that they load data that's conforming to that data model in there. And then you have a FHIR server with a FHIR API that can be used by other people. And then it really comes to the FHIR app developers on the right, who can take such a FHIR API that's now being exposed and build apps on top of that. So we can actually realize the promise of FHIR, make sure that we have reusable apps across many different healthcare ecosystems. And for that, people can use, for example, the open source implementation of FHIR within the C#.NET implementation language that we maintain as FHIR. And that also underlies all of our different products that we'll see here today. What are we going to do in this session? We're going to build an implementation guide according to some specific set requirements. And we're going to base that, of course, on Canada Baseline. And we're going to use the tools Simplifier and Forge for that. Why would you use Simplifier and Forge? Well, there's two main reasons that I want to stress why it's a good idea to look at this. First of all, we try to make FHIR development easier, so everyone on your team can help develop FHIR projects. We all know that FHIR developers who have also experience with FHIR are very rare. So we want to make sure that data modeling can be done by people who are great at data modeling, actual data modelers, but they don't need to be command line experts or other sins very technical. So we try to make very user-friendly tools that can help you do data modeling. And in the same way, we try to make sure that our implementation guide building is very easy. So we have a what you see is what you get editor, where you directly see what you're typing and the effect that it has. So then the documentation can actually be done by people who are great at writing technical documentation. And again, not necessarily developers who know how to set up all the command line tools and these kind of things. And then the second factor is that we provide with Simplifier governance across multiple FHIR projects. So not just within one FHIR project, but Simplifier really allows you to search across all different projects. For example, all the different projects within Canada Health Infoway, to see if there's anyone who has already within this scope defined any profile on blood pressure or anything around COVID. I want to stress that what I'm going to show here today is just one of the possible ways to work with Simplifier. Simplifier is really a platform that tries to be tool agnostic. So you can choose, or other teams within your organization can choose the tools that fit them best, whether it's Forge or FHIR for their local development here on the left. And whether you want to build an implementation guide with the Simplifier IG editor or with IG Publisher, whether you want to use GitHub in between or directly want to publish to Simplifier. Regardless of which tools you choose, we try to make sure that all these FHIR specifications come together in one consistent place, and you can search them across. You can see all the different dependencies, how they relate to each other in one platform that will bring you governance across all your different FHIR specifications. Okay, so now that we know what we're going to develop, let's start by having a look at simplifier.net. So Simplifier, as I mentioned, is the platform where you can both collaborate with your colleagues on a FHIR specification, but also publish to the wide world when you're happy with that. And where we can see here is that there's many different FHIR projects on Simplifier that are developing FHIR specifications for their jurisdiction or organization. So there's many different projects, many different profiles being developed. And when we hover here over the map, we can see that the US is super active on FHIR development. Germany, for example, also has many different organizations publishing FHIR specifications. The UK, NHS Digital, is using Simplifier together with HL7 UK to publish the UK core FHIR specification. But also Canada itself is very active on the platform with the Canadian FHIR Registry. So let's dive into the Canadian jurisdiction here. And we can see that there's the Canadian FHIR Registry organization, and there's many different projects that are active in Simplifier. So let's dive into that Simplifier organization here. And then we can see the Canadian FHIR Registry. We land on the page, the overview page here, which explains what the Canadian FHIR Registry is about. So bringing together all FHIR development for the Canadian jurisdiction here. Also how you can get access to publishing into the Canadian FHIR Registry. So you can reach out here via this email contact to the InfoWay help desk to get access to develop FHIR projects on here. And when we go into projects here, we see that there's many different FHIR development projects on the platform that are active and are being developed every day. So this is a moment where I want to quickly switch back to one more slide and discuss what is a FHIR development project. So generally this is how I see the FHIR development lifecycle. You come into FHIR with some kind of a use case where you think FHIR can help you solve an interoperability challenge. And when you have this use case clear, you probably start logical modeling. So you take FHIR data models, or you start without FHIR data models, and you think about what are the different entities and what are the different attributes that you need to have within them. So you can use the FHIR framework for this already, or you can just use a regular spreadsheet. And then you generally roll into this FHIR development cycle, where you start by building some FHIR specifications, profiles, value sets, etc. with Forge or FHIR shorthand. You do quality control on them, you make sure that they are all high standards. And then when you're happy with these FHIR resources, you start to document them. And this is what FHIR calls an implementation guide. And then once you're happy with both the specification and the documentation, you publish to the wide world and make FHIR release artifacts that can be used by others to implement your specification. So this is the publishing step. And here you can release FHIR packages and FHIR implementation guides, which are stable versions of your specification over time, with a version number that indicates how mature they are, from 0.0.1 or even some preview versions to stable versions like a 1.0, etc. And then once you have your published FHIR specifications, you of course collect feedback from your stakeholders, from your users, and you continue to build new versions and iterate and improve your specification over time. So this is what I refer to as the FHIR project lifecycle. So when we go back to the Canadian FHIR registry, as I said, we have many different FHIR projects on here. And one of those projects is the Canadian FHIR baseline profiles, what used to be known as Canada Core. So when we dive into this FHIR project, we see that we now have an overview of this FHIR project. We see that there's many different resources in here. So profiles, kind of the data models. We have terminology resources like ValueSets, code systems, etc. And we have, so that's really the output of the build step and the quality control. So these are the resources that have been developed. Then we can also click through here to the implementation guide, which is the output from the documentation step. And then on the third step, the publishing step, that's really what happens here at the packages. So we see that there has been a stable release of the Canada FHIR baseline profiles called HL7.FHIR.ca.baseline, and the latest version here is 1.1.3. So we remember this because we need to build on top of this later. So that's the output of the publishing step. And then as I mentioned, the fourth step, you try to get feedback from your community. And that's what we use the issue step for here. So this is where you can report an issue on the FHIR specification or on a specific resource within that specification. And this is input to the project members here on the team to develop the next specification and make it even better. So now that we have seen a FHIR project and we've seen the stable release from Canada baseline profiles that we need to build on top, it's time for us to start building our own FHIR project. Anyone who comes to Simplifier can make a free account with the sign up button here on the top right. With signing up, you get access to both features on Simplifier. You can have a free FHIR project where you can develop your FHIR resources, and you can try out Forge, whether it's something for you. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in here. And once I log in, I end up at my portal where you can see all the different projects and organizations that relate to me. So this is the home base for all of my content on Simplifier. The project that I'm going to create it under my Acme organization. So I have under my organizations here Acme, and Acme is my demo organization where I have all the freedom to do what I want based on the Looney Tunes. And there's already a few projects here, but I'm going to create a new project especially for this demonstration. So I'm going to go here to projects, create a new one, and this is going to be our Acme Canada project. This is a demonstration project for FHIR North. And we're gonna base it on FHIR R4. We're gonna reuse, we're gonna give the people access, everyone from Acme who is working on the R4 product. And this is gonna be a national specification, especially for Canada. And we're gonna make this a public project to work with. So once I filled in all the details, I create the project. And now let's make it a bit more pretty. So first of all, let's make sure that we added the description here of our project. So this is kind of the README of the project. I already prepared something here. So you can just write Markdown here. You can use some HTML to make this as pretty as you want. So now we have a nice banner and we have some information on this project and a link to the conference. And finally, I'm going to set the dependency here to make sure that we are building on top of Canada Core. So I'm going to dependencies here. You see that we're already building on the core FHIR specification, but we just looked up that Canadian baseline project. So I think it was hl7.phir.ca.baseline. We're going to select the 1.1.3, the latest published version of the Canadian baseline profiles, and add that to our project. And once we've saved it, it's now part of our dependency, so we can just freely refer to any of the canonicals that are defined, any of the resources that are defined in Canada baseline. And now with that, we're ready to start developing on this project. Okay, so this is the moment where we're going to develop, and for this we're going to use Forge. And Forge you can find from the downloads button here on the homepage of Simplifier, and you can download it from there. I have already installed this here on my virtual machine with Windows. And the first thing that we are going to do is to download the project that we have already on Simplifier to our local development environment. So I'm going to say open FHIR project from Simplifier. I'm going to select the parent folder. I want this to be in my Acme folder where I have all my other Acme projects. And I'm going to download the Acme Canada project that we already made to my machine. Let me move myself out of the way. Okay, so quickly, the entire project was already downloaded. You see that the packages that we have added as dependencies are already installed to our project. So we're good to go. We can directly start building. And the first thing that we're going to do is look at the requirements. So I have those open here. So the first part of our use case here is to start developing a new profile or structure definition on the ease of respiration. And that's going to be based on the observation resource within Canada Baseline. We need to set the category to be of value exam from a certain HL7 value set. And we're going to set the code to a specific SNOMED code. So that's the first step that we're going to do. So we're going to move into the Canada Baseline project here, move into the package, and we're going to find the right structure definition for us to build on top of. So we're going to find a profile on top of observation. And we see that there is a base observation resource here. And that seems like a great place for us to start. So we're going to make a more specific version of that Canada Baseline observation profile. So I've right-clicked and then we're going to say make a new derived profile. And this is where we fill in all the metadata of this profile. So for now I'm going to call this ease of respiration. Is that correct? Let me check. Ease of respiration, yes. Then we need to set the canonical, which is the unique identifier for our profile. I'm going to make that my own. So fake Acme has their own domain name where they publish everything. And specifically for Canada, we have this base URL /FHIR/CA. I'm going to save this file. And now we have a working copy of our observation. So the first thing that we want to do is to set the category to be of the value exam. Now, you could, for example, make this a fixed value on this category, but actually we want to make sure that there's at least the value exam in here, and we don't want to limit other people to also send other category values in, because this is a repeating element. So instead what we're going to do is to slice this element. And this means that we create a few buckets and we say, okay, if the bucket is exam, then these are the requirements. So I'm going to select category and hit the slice button here. And you can directly see that one of the nice things from Simplifier, from Forge here, is that it will automatically tell us if there's any issues with this resource that we're working on. And we can even right click and navigate to the element where the issue is. So in this case, the element issue here is we have started slicing, but we have not filled in any discriminator for the slicing. So that's an issue. What we're going to do is we're going to slice here on pattern. And so the pattern this. So we're going to say, okay, every slice here will have a pattern that will define in which slice it, against which slice it should be evaluated. So let's add a slice for exam. So this will be our, let's say, exam category. And we're going to make this one mandatory to make sure that there's always the exam category in there. And then we've promised to set a pattern, so because that's what our slicing is based on. So let's open the pattern field here and add a coding because we want to fill in both the system and the value. I have already copied to my clipboard here the value for this specific value set. So that's the observation category, and the value that we're going to use to code is exam. Okay. That is step 1.1 done. And now over to step 1.2, where we're going to set the identifying code for this observation to a specific SNOMED code. Let's go to code here. And again, we're going to use the pattern to set the specific value for this code. So let's open the pattern and again add a coding in here. In this time we're going to use the SNOMED CT value set system, and I can just select that from the drop down. That's a very common one. And then the code, I have copied that again to my clipboard. That's this code. And with that, I think we have completed the first exercise. Let's save this one to disk. I'm going to save this as a JSON file. And then we move on to the next exercise, where we're going to create a value set based on SNOMED CT. And we're going to use this value set to bind the value of our observation profile that we just made to that value set. And then that makes sure that only 3 different values can be used within that value set. So for that, I'm going to use a different tool. It's a different tool that's freely available, and that is called Snapper. So this one, I will put the links within the slide deck that I've attached. And we're going to use create a new value set here. So I'm going to hit the plus button here on the value set and give this some nice information. So let's see, we're going to call this our ease of respiration value set. Ease of respiration value set. We're going to give it the canonical. So again, we're going to use that same base URL that we've defined previously. We give it a nice description here. Result of ease of respiration observation. So this is the result. And then we can select all the different codes that we need in here. So let's add a few more rows and then add different codes to that. Okay, I've copied all the values in there. Of course, if you have a lot of values, you would just create a CSV file or TSV file and upload that here instead of copying them manually. So we've now created our value set. And then on the upload tab here, we can see the result, a nice value set. And we can download that value set to use that in our project. Now I've just copied the downloaded value set to our project. And to finish the second exercise, now we need to make sure that we bind the value to our specific value set that we've made. So we're going to the value set here. First of all, currently the value can be of many different types. And we're going to make sure that this can only be of type codable concept. And then we're going to make sure that we set a value set binding here. So all the values in this set can only come from our value set that we've just defined. So we're going to make it required. And then we need, of course, to also fill in the value set reference. So this is where we're going to paste the canonical from the value set that we've just created. And with that, we have completed the second exercise. And now it's time to make some example data. So our exercise requires us to create at least two different FHIR instances. One of them is a patient called Colin Robinson. He is 75 years old, he is a male, and this profile needs to be, the instance needs to be based on the Canadian patient profile. And then next we're going to make an observation for the observation profile that we've made just before. For this I'm going to use a tool called YamlGen, and you can reach this again via the Simplifier homepage when you go here to the YamlGen playground. And what you see here is that this is an easy way for us to create a patient or other instances by quickly writing their information. So for example, let's change this patient to Colin Robinson. And as easy as that, we have on the right here a patient instance named Colin Robinson. This is our tree overview, but you can also see the same JSON representation of a real patient called Colin Robinson. So from there, let's add the extra information. He is of the gender male. Okay, that's captured. And then the age needs to be 75. Well, we don't capture age in the FHIR patient profile, but we do have the birth date. So let's fill in the birth date here. And let's make that somewhere in 1965. So let's say somewhere there. And now we filled in the birth date. So this is nice. This is a quick way to create a patient. But the really nice thing from YamlGen is that we can actually also create a bunch of patients. So let's, in this case, instead of filling in a specific identifier, we're going to say, okay, give me a set of multiple patients. So, and then I'm going to say, okay, patients, and then give me, for example, 4 patients. And then just as quickly as that, I have 4 patients instead of 1. But of course, they're all still named Colin Robinson. And they all have the same information. So we have a solution for that, where we fill in, we can make a few arrays. For example, now we have an array of different first names, and we have an array, a list of different last names. And then instead of filling in the exact name here, we can just say, okay, take a value from first names. And in the same way, take for the last name here, take a value from the list of last names. And then if I hit Ctrl Enter again, now we have a bunch of different patients. Some are Colin Robinson, but some have a different name, and other combinations of the values that we filled in. So as quickly as that, we've created 4 patients instead of 1. And then let's continue from there. So we are going to also make an observation. Oh, I forgot one thing. We need to make sure, of course, that the patient profile adheres to the patient adheres to the Canadian base profile. So we do that with the meta.profile. That's how we claim that our example here conforms to a specific profile. So we fill in the meta.profile and we link that to the canonical, the URL of the Canadian baseline patient. Let's see if that works. Yeah, all filled in. So let's do the same for observation. So let's create maybe 3 different observations. And we're gonna put some information in there. Well, this observation needs to adhere to our profile that we've made earlier. And that's here the ease of respiration from Acme. So let's paste that in here. There's a few mandatory fields in this observation. So let's set the status here to final, and let's set the information that we had before. So let's maybe start by linking this to the patients that we just created. So we need to make this for Colin Robertson, but we're just going to make them link to the other patients that we've made here. So the subject here, instead that we're linking it to a specific patient, we're going to say reference any of the patients here that we've created earlier. So I'm going to use the hash sign here again. And now we have a bunch of patients and we have a bunch of observations, and the observations are linked to the different patients that we've made. And they should adhere to the right profile. So let's fill in the rest of the information. Let's see what else we needed from here. Well, they need to experience that labored breathing. So we need to set the value of the profile. So value, and this value is a codable concept. And that's a complex element that consists of coding element. And the coding has 3 different elements, and that's the code. And that's the system. And that's the display. So let's copy those again. Display value and the code. And then instead of typing the full system for SNOMED here, I'm going to make a variable because we're going to need this variable more often. So I'm going to say the SNOMED SCT variable here. And just like we've made those lists before, let's make that SCT value here. So we don't have to type that multiple times. Okay. Nice. Okay, so we have observations and they have a value with code coding and all the different values in here. So let me continue for the same. Of course, we need to fill in the category and we need to fill in the code, all the elements that we've seen before. So I'm just gonna do it a bit quicker now. So code also has a coding, we have a code in a system, and here we're gonna reuse that SNOMED SCT value set or code system. And then finally, let's also add the category in where we made that slice for category. So there is the category. And for this, I'm also going to define a variable. So we have all our code systems defined here up top. Okay, that should do it. And now let's save these all to a file and bring them into our project. Okay, so I've copied all the resources that we've just made, all the 4 patient and the 3 observations, to our project. You can see them here. They're all listed. And now we can quickly use the quality control that's built into Forge and in Simplifier to not just validate one individual resource, we've seen those error messages, but validate all resources at once. And then we might find some unexpected results about the resource that we just made. So when I just ran this, I noticed, hey, there is some issues here. So the observations that we've made, they claim that there is no value for the exam category. And after checking for a while, I noticed that I actually made a copy and paste mistake earlier. So in the ease of respiration, when we set the pattern here on the exam category, I pasted the canonical of the value set and not of the code system that we should use here. So let's update that with the right value here. Let's save this profile and now run our quality control again. And there's no more issues. Great. So we quickly see the value here of using quality control, quickly validating all the different resources in our project, whether you have edited them in Simplifier or not. That concluded our first set of exercises, and now let's move on to this next, and let's go through it a bit quicker. Now we know the tool and the different things we have to set. So in our second use case, we have to make a device, a maintained device, and add a few extensions to that. We're going to add a simple extension on device hours and then a complex extension with multiple values in there. Date performed, device hours, performer. And then on the second half, we'll make examples to go along with that. So let's move back to Forge. And here in Forge, we're going to, again, go into Canada baseline, go into the package, filter for all the profiles, and this time let's filter for profiles on device. Yeah, there we go. We have a few device profiles in here, but let's take the medical device profile. And again, make a derived profile here. And we're going to call this one maintained device. Maintained device. Update our canonical. Fake acme. .org/FHIR/CA. Okay. And yep, let's go. So we've updated that, and now we need to add 2 extensions. So we first need to create those extensions. So let's go back to our folder here and create a new extension. And let's start with the simple extension here. So we're going to call that total device hours. Fake acme.org/CA. Okay. And this is a simple extension. Again, we see that we get a direct feedback on any issues that might occur. And of course, if we have an extension, we also need to add the context to where the extension can be used. So let's navigate there. And we have an easy selection here, context. Let's add a context here. The type will be of an element, and we can select the element here with this navigation thing. So we can filter on resource device. We can add a specific element, but this is just going to be an extension on device itself, not on a specific element. So select device, and there we have set our context. And then in the element tree, we have the extension here. The value needs to be a decimal. And that's, I think that's it. Yeah. So that's our first extension. Let's save that one. Okay. And let's create one more extension. Go back to the project. That was a simple extension that we just made. And now let's make a complex extension. So the complex extension is going to be called a maintenance event. And it will have multiple values in there. Fake acme. Okay. And if you want to add a complex extension, let's first set the context again. This is again a device-based extension. So easy as that. And then going back to the element tree here, instead of setting the value directly, this one will have multiple extensions in the extension, making it a complex extension. But we don't have to make a new extension to put in there. We can just go to the extension level and say, okay, add a different element here. And we need to add 3 different elements. So let's do that directly. 3 different elements. Okay. And the first element will be the date when the maintenance was performed. So go to the, here go to the element, let's give it a name, the date performed, and then the value needs to be a date. Then for the next one, that's going to be the current device hours. So I guess the number of hours that were on the clock when the maintenance was being done. This will be a decimal, just like the other extension that we've made. And then finally for the third element, we're going to connect the performer, so who performed the maintenance. I guess normally this would be a reference to another FHIR resource, but in this case we're just gonna make a string out of it to set who did the maintenance and fill in the information there. Let's see, there's the string. There we go. Okay, so there's our extension. Let's save this one too. And once we have saved them, we can go back to our device here. We're going to add the extension as we thought to the top level, so to the root element. So we click extend here, and already we will figure out which elements are in scope available for you to add to this specific node that we've selected. So let's first add the simple one. So that's the total device hours. And this one, we're gonna make it 0 to star. So total device hours. So that one is added. And then let's add one more extension to device here. And that's the maintenance event. And let's give it a name, maintenance event. And then we will make this 0 to star. So this can actually repeat multiple times, of course, multiple maintenance events for this specific device. So let's save this one to our folder. And then we have completed this one. And let's then move on to making example data for this resource too. So we're going back for this to Simplifier. And I'll do it a bit quicker now because we know how it works. And take the something I already prepared here. So let's make a few different devices. So we've made 4 patients, 3 observations. So maybe we can here make 2 different devices. And let's see. Yeah. So if all went well, these are our 2 devices for the patient that we have created. And finally, I've created a capability statement here, which defines the capabilities for Canada Acme, all the different REST actions that are possible and whether they should or shall or may be supported, and also which search parameters may be supported. So taking all those resources back to our FHIR project here, it's now time to sync them all back to our Simplifier project. So we hit the synchronize button here. We see that we've created 17 new resources, quite a bit. And when we continue, this is now synchronized to our Simplifier project. And then when we go back to Simplifier, we will see all the different resources that have been added to our Acme project. Acme Canada. And we'll see now here that we have many different profiles, capability statements, extensions, and many example resources. And with that, it's now time to build the documentation for our project on the implementation guides tab. On the guides tab is where we build our implementation guides. We can get started by hitting the create button here and fill in the metadata for our guide. So Acme Canada implementation guide. We have a URL key already, we make it public. Okay, and that's as easy as we get started with building an implementation guide. And what we have here is basically a fancy website builder where we can type our markdown here in the middle, and then on the right we see directly rendered what we have built. So we can write a nice introduction here. This is the implementation guide for Acme Canada. And we can write Markdown in here, but also use some special commands. They're all listed here under the help section, like making a nice index from our entire guide that currently only has one page. We can directly in here also write some, make some diagrams. For example, let's say we have a use case description, and this is our use case. We write some blend UML. So this is a well-known diagramming language, UML, where we can say, okay, the patient says to the doctor, hello, and then let's see what it looks like. Okay, and then the doctor says back to the patient something like, welcome. Great, so we have a quick use case overview, and I've already uploaded an image, so we can also maybe do some add some image here. So I will use the render command for that and say that we're going to render the file that is called something like spirometry. And there we have a nice image together with our guide. So that's our really easy way to get started with the implementation guide. Let's have a look what it looks like. Okay, so that's a very simple live website. Maybe we choose a different layout. When we go here to the settings, there is some predefined styles that we can choose from. So now we have this one. Maybe we go for the palatable style here, see what that's look like. Yeah, that's maybe more what we're looking for. And then now let's add a few more different folders and overviews and maybe some information on our actually profiles that we've defined. So I'm gonna add a new folder with all our different profiles in here. And maybe another one with all our different value sets. And under the profiles here, I'm going to add another page that's going to describe our ease of use observation profile, ease of respiration observation profile. So we can make that page and we can now start typing more information here. But I have some nice snippets already defined where I can, this is how I want my general structure definition pages to look like. So let's include the page content for our structure definition. And then with one click, we have a nice overview here of a structure definition. So currently that is the structure definition of, that's the structure definition of our the base patient. But I'm going to replace that, of course, with our ease of respiration structure definition. So I'm going to select this canonical URL. You see that's used on multiple places on the page, but I'm going to change that all with the canonical URL for our patient here. And easy as that, we now have a table here that just gives some metadata on our profile. We have a page defining or a piece defining all the different renderings. So currently we have the hybrid rendering here of our resource. Maybe we are more interested in differential rendering. So we can change it just as quickly as that. And we can see this live also rendered on the website that we have. So I'm going to continue and add a few more pages, and then we'll be back in a moment to make a release of our profiles and implementation guide. Now that our guide is a bit more fleshed out, let's make an official release, a stable release of both the implementation guide and the resources within our specification. Going back to the Simplifier project, we go to the Packages tab, and on the Packages tab, we are going to create a new package. This new package, we're going to call that acme.canada, And the first version that we're going to release is 0.0.1. The release author is Acme Corp. And we're going to write some release notes. First release. Yay. Okay, so we have everything set up. Time to make a package that includes all of our specification resources. So this is really the machine readable information that can be used by anyone to implement the FHIR specification that we have defined for Acme Canada. So we have a beautiful FHIR package with all the resources that we have defined for Acme Canada. And now let's accompany that with a stable release of our implementation guide. So we go back to the implementation guide, and also here we're going to publish. Well, first we're going to set actually the scope of our implementation guide. So the implementation guide is now talking still about the live resources within our project. But now that we have a release, we're going to actually document acme.canada and specifically the version 0.0.1. Save. And now any resource that is being rendered within our implementation guide is no longer the live version, but it's actually the stable released version of the resource. So then we can go on to publish. We're going to also call this 0.0.1 to keep those versions in sync. We're going to make a public release. And then again here we can hit the publish button to make a release of our implementation guide. And now once this is done, we have a stable version of all the HTML and JavaScript that goes into this implementation guide. And we have two versions, the live version and the stable release version of our implementation guide too. And then that basically concludes our entire release process. We have created resources, we've made documentation around it, we've published them, and now it's time to get feedback from the community and implement the specification and keep going with new releases over time. So to recap, what have we accomplished today? Well, first of all, we've built an entire implementation guide with Simplifier and Forge based on the Canada baseline, based on all the specifications that were asked of us, building profiles, adding extensions, adding ValueSet bindings, creating resources with that, and building an implementation guide around that, and releasing that to the public for everyone to use. I hope you've learned that Simplifier and Forge can help you, first of all, to make it easier to do FHIR development. Since FHIR developers are scarce, let's make sure that we can all contribute to developing great FHIR specifications. And secondly, Simplifier can help provide that level of governance on top of multiple FHIR projects. If you have any more questions, please reach out to me. My email address is here, or how to reach me on Twitter or any other social platform. And I'm also available at the Q&A section after this. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see you soon.